Hi, welcome to the California CEDAR sponsored Communities of Practice series. CEDAR, which stands for Collaboration for Effective Educator Development, Accountability, and Reform, is a national center based at the University of Florida and has a mission to support students with disabilities in achieving college and career-ready standards. For those wanting to know more, please visit CEDAR.org. That's CEEDAR.org. This webinar series aims to share information that supports educator preparation programs in redesign efforts grounded in inclusive practice. The topics include teacher performance assessment, preparation and requirements, traumatic brain injury, extensive support needs and inclusion, and dyslexia. And we have more topics coming soon. We hope you find the information and resources helpful. This meeting, so just know that we are recording this meeting, which means you'll all get the link to the recording when it's done. We've been posting these as well. We have a channel, a YouTube channel for CEDAR for these community of practice meetings, and we will be we will download this recording and upload it to YouTube, and we transcribe it as well. The other thing is I can put captions on if people would like. If you would like to see caption, you can, those are enabled. And I see it going right now. I think that was my biggest housekeeping issues. Otherwise, I want to welcome everybody to our 5th Community of Practice lunch meeting. And I see folks are still coming in, which is fabulous. This is our 5th one. I think we have 1 or 2 left, but we may be doing some more beyond that. And this one is going to be on literacy and dyslexia. We have 2 very impressive presenters for us, and Dr. Kennedy is going to introduce them for you, but for everybody else, welcome, and we're glad to have you here. And I am going to turn it over to Dr. Kennedy.
Let me make sure there we go. Good morning, everybody. So good to see you. Welcome. Yes, this is our 5th, and as Anne was just saying, the recording will join the other recordings that we have on YouTube. It's through the Cal Council YouTube, but we are making those as soon as we're compiling them. They are compiled. We'll add this one to the compilation and then send you out all of the links at the same time. Won't that be fun? Very nice to see you all from all over the place. I'll say a few words about CEDAR. So CEDAR is a national, what would you say, organization, let's say, and it is actually funded by a federal grant, and it's been in existence for several years. Many states have their teacher preparation universities and programs involved in CEDAR, and in California we've been involved in CEDAR for about, I think, 6 years, between 5 and 6 years. So we do many different projects, but they're all aimed at promoting the teacher education that's in inclusive environments. That is excellent. We do a lot of things like this that are resources for everybody, and we've been concentrating this past year in California CEDAR on implementing the new SPED credentials that we're all doing this year. We have to do this year, all the new things that are coming up. So many of our presentations in these webinars have been to help you all, hopefully, and us as well. All of us are in the same boat to do this. So today we have 2 wonderful speakers and colleagues. Susan Porter. Dr. Porter is at California State University, Dominguez Hills, and she's in the special education department. And Dr. Sue Sears, who's at CSUN Northridge, CSU Northridge, so a colleague of mine there. And both are very long-term contributors and active to California's special education teacher ed, have done so much in so many areas. So right now they're going to introduce what their current involvement is in this collaborative, and then take off from there. Are there any questions before we get going? Okay, all right, thank you. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Jenny, for inviting us, and thank you for that lovely introduction, and welcome everybody. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Let me share my screen. And we're really focusing today on the new literacy standards, which include the California Dyslexia Guidelines and the incorporation of these into special education teacher preparation programs. I'm Sue Sears and my colleague Susan Porter. And we are together going to be presenting today, and it's a thrill to be able to work with people from across the CSU, and Susan's one of them. So again, thank you for joining us. A loose agenda, I'd say, maybe kind of three parts. A beginning, we're going to look at, I'm just going to speak briefly about the work of the collaborative, of which Susan and I are both a part. Talk a little bit about the dyslexia modules that the collaborative has created in alignment with the California Dyslexia Guidelines, and walk us through the first module, which is up on the collaborative website, freely accessible to anyone who would like to use it. I'm going to shift a little bit, and now then to the literacy standards and TPEs. Susan is also a member of CARW, the seat out of the Chancellor's Office, the Center for the Advancement of Reading and Writing, which involves representatives from all CSU campuses, and then also work that she and colleagues are doing at Dominguez Hills, and end with some breakout rooms and an opportunity for you to share information with one another. So the context for the work that we're going to report on and the resources we're going to share today is in part the UC CSU California Collaborative for Neurodiversity and Learning. And this is a group that has brought together researchers and faculty members from across the UC system and the CSU system, with the aim of really supporting the literacy development of all of California's students. And one of the nice things about the collaborative, and I think one of the unique things about the collaborative, it is this opportunity for faculty, in this case, to work together and to collaborate together on a common goal. These are the people who are involved in a task force, which is focused on teacher preparation. The collaborative has multiple initiatives. The one that Susan and I are involved in focuses on teacher preparation in California. These are the faculty members from Dominguez Hills. Susan and Kai Green are in special education. Kai is also a speech and language pathologist with a lot of background in the area of bilingual education. Lori Inman is in liberal studies and in an administrative role, but has a tremendous background in the area of literacy instruction. And Pablo Ramirez is the chair of the teacher education department at Dominguez Hills. From Cal State LA, Anna Osipova and Jilly Chang, who are in special education, but different areas, and Brian Thornton. Joining me from Northridge are Renee Zelkowska and Dominic Grosso, who are both in the Department of Elementary Education, and my colleagues in special ed, Rachel and Vanessa. And from UCLA, Laura Reinhardt and Rebecca Gottlieb. So we have, working on these modules, a group of individuals who represent general education, special education, and bilingual education. The task force is really overall, I'd say, committed to providing resources that support diverse learners with a wide range of learning needs, including students, but not exclusively students with dyslexia. And to this end, we've been involved in this designing a series of e-learning modules. They're designed for all teacher educators all teacher education programs, elementary, secondary, bilingual, and special education. And they're aligned with the California Dyslexia Guidelines. Susan. Susan.
Hi, hello, everyone. Yeah, hi, everyone. I see some colleagues, former colleagues, well, still colleagues, from National University. Good to see you. But yes, the context for developing the dyslexia modules, there has been I'd say a thrust in the last 5 to 10 years on number one, taking a close look at dyslexia and how well we prepare teachers. And to that end, Assembly Bill 1369, which was passed in 2015, is required guidelines to be used to guide general and special education teachers. And that's, both for the identification but also the servicing and the teaching of students with dyslexia. So, and then Senate Bill 488 was fast-tracked, and that was that required the commission to ensure that all requirements on teacher preparation and literacy are, address both the dyslexia guidelines and some literacy approaches that are successful, and that the ELA, that ELA and EL ESL are closely interwoven into the TPE. So, and that's, let's see, so the next slide. Okay. So, and then when the dyslexia guidelines and the literacy program standards and TPEs kind of come together is in the Program Standard 7, which is the literacy program standards and embedded within the TPE. And those, again, are based on a comprehensive California state literacy plan. They must, and they do include multi-tiered systems of support, and they must incorporate the California Dyslexia Guidelines. And of course, the ELD for English learners has to be integrated as well. So, and the inclusion of assessment, a wide variety of assessments, as we know, and especially in MTSS, not just formal assessments, but formative assessments, progress monitoring assessments, and that teacher candidates know what they are and can use them towards effective literacy instruction. So using the example, just kind of taking a look at TPE, that's the TPE Literacy Standard 7, as it's been recently updated, and we'll talk a bit more about that. Literacy Standard 7F is literacy instruction for students with disabilities, and embedded within the multiple and single subject TPEs, it does require teacher programs to incorporate the California Dyslexia Guidelines through coursework and through supervised field work. So, understanding how to differentiate, how to use UDL, understanding structured literacy practices so that they can either work as a team or incorporate these strategies within general education instruction. So, and I think everyone is familiar with the California Dyslexia Guidelines. I have a hard copy somewhere, and I'm sure many of you do too. And it calls on several aspects. There it is. Just an updated definition, which is, I think, it's safe to say it's evolving, isn't it, Sue? We're having some conversations about even more nuanced and in-depth definition. Emphasize the new emphasis and re-emphasis on the neuroscience of dyslexia, which we are planning to address in the modules that we're designing, and looking at dyslexia embedded or as part of a language learning disability, and typical or wide-ranging characteristics of dyslexia, both strengths and weaknesses. And of course, throughout the TPEs, not just the literacy TPEs, that huge emphasis on asset-based strengths and not just a disability orientation. And the social emotional factors of dyslexia, which, many of you here know and have, work with your candidates on understanding what are the byproducts of not being able to read, of advancing in school, but not advancing in reading skills. And then finally, just when the concern may not be dyslexia, and I know that we address this a lot in our coursework, but very intentionally addressed in the guidelines. What are other factors that may be coexisting or may actually be separate from dyslexia that are challenges in terms of reading? Dyslexia in English learners, again, the co and the complex overlapping of reading challenges, and how the dyslexia guidelines talking about what is recommended for pre-service and in-service preparation, and then screening and assessing dyslexia. And that part is, I think, as Sue could talk about more, there is a movement, and there's actually, I think at UC San Francisco, working on a universal screening assessment for dyslexia for California. How do special education and 504 plans correctly it helps students with dyslexia adapt and access the curriculum? Effective approaches for teaching students with dyslexia. And then assistive technology, how do we use it? How do we incorporate it naturally into instruction, and especially in a UDL fashion? And then information for parents and guardians, because that most of the dyslexia guidelines are meant for educators and educational policymakers, but there is close attention as well, and reminders of working with parents and guardians of children and young adults with dyslexia. So. Okay, and it also has the appendices, so it's a very extensive document: assessment tools, assistive technology resources, etc. So, and lots of references on evidence-based practices for the dyslexia and services for students with dyslexia. So.
As Susan went through, it's a very extensive document, very thorough. And our work on the modules actually predated SB 488. So we began thinking about this and using what Susan just described as this document as a basis. There was a lot of really good work that had already been done, and we wanted to build on that work, and we wanted to align with it. So our group, the task force, committed ourselves and tasked ourselves with designing some modules that would assist teacher candidates in acquiring the knowledge and skills needed to effectively teach pupils with dyslexia, and to support faculty in incorporating this content in coursework. And in this process, in the back of our heads and in the forefront was also our desire to explore the complexities, really, of defining, assessing, and teaching students within the context of today's diverse communities, families, and student populations. We have and are in the process of developing 6 modules. 3 of them are on this slide. 3 of them are on this side. I think we want to give you just a little bit of time to read through these descriptions. We're not going to read them to you, but I think it's important to get this. I hope the descriptions give you a sense of the really thoughtful, research-based, and rich work that has been going on by members of the task force. So just a few minutes to kind of read through these brief descriptors. So those are the modules that eventually will all be up on the collaborative website. The Introduction to Dyslexia module, which we're going to walk you through today, is already there, and the link for that module is in chat. Jenny was kind enough to put that in the chat. This is how we see those 6 modules then aligning with the California Dyslexia guidelines. The goal was to be able to condense some of the content from the written document, but yet to cover all of the content in the document. The introductory module focuses on chapters 1, 4, and 13, with information also within that module from chapters 2, neuroscience, 5, socio-emotional factors, 6, when the concern, as Susan was saying, may not be dyslexia, and screening and assessment. The module on neuroscience, which will be the next module, which will be up on the website, of course, looks at chapter 2, also socio-emotional factors because of the intertwinement of cognition and emotion, and chapter 9. Language really takes a deep dive into dyslexia as a language learning disability, but also looks at dyslexia and the intersection of bilingual education and dual language learners and assessment issues within that space. Screening and assessment focuses, just as you would think, on screen chapter 9 and 10, instruction chapter 11, but interfaces and goes across many other of the chapters. And then we were not anticipating that there would be the new pre-K 3 credential, but people in the task force are interested in early education, Jilly Chang and Anna Osipova in particular. They wanted to do this module, and we're so glad they did, because we think it will be really a valuable resource for people who are working on developing and implementing this new credential. So let's take a look at this first module, and it should, Jenny, I think the link is in the chat. Is that right?
Yes, twice.
Twice. Here it is. This is what, when you click on this link, this is what you should see. Are we good to go, Jenny? Do you think people have got it?
It's not, you're still showing the slide and not the website.
Oh,
So
thank you, Ann.
you may have to pull up the switch
Okay.
the screen you're sharing. So you may have to stop sharing and share the,
Yes. Okay, let me do that. Thank you.
not a problem.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, good. Thank you. This is what appears after you can go to the collaborative website. Here's the UC CSU collaborative website. You click on e-learning. This is what you should be seeing. Good?
Mhm.
Okay. All right, this is the home page. We're going to kind of walk through this module. I want you can pay attention. I'll note for you some of the design features that go across all the modules, as well as highlight some of the content for this first module. All of the modules have a home page. The home page has a brief purpose. All modules begin with objectives, a series of lessons, key takeaways, resources for whoever is using the module, a faculty member, an instructor, could even be someone doing a professional development, and then who is primarily responsible for the content. So let's start the module. These are the objectives for this first module, and there are 5 of them. Understand the major concepts of the existing definition. As Susan mentioned, the definition is evolving as we speak. Identify the key features of dyslexia as currently defined and understood. Describe potential characteristics of dyslexia across the age span. Discuss new research, and identify strategies for consulting with families. In the second lesson, we introduce the experience of being dyslexic. It is individually unique. For some, like Richard Branson, who credits it for his success, and for others, like Jonathan Mooney, who describes in a video how it is accompanied by problems of attention and issues of social emotional well-being. And so we begin this with Jonathan Mooney's video.
At the dinner table with my pops, it was Jonathan, stop it, stop it, stop it. What is wrong with you? I was the kid in middle school who had such a hard time keeping his mouth shut that I grew up with Shirley, the receptionist, in the principal's office, right? And in high school, I was a kid who had such a hard time with reading that I spent most of the day hiding in the bathroom with tears streaming down my face. I did not learn to read until I was 12 years old. Couldn't read until I was 12. I struggled with anxiety, with depression, and I had a plan for suicide. I was diagnosed with a whole bunch of language-based learning disabilities. I was turned in to a problem. You know, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this guy named Mr. R. I'll tell you about Mr. R real quick. So when I met Mr. R, he would always ask me, you know, after school, during school, what are you good at, Jonathan? And all I ever heard about in special ed wasn't what I was good at, but what I was bad at. So he'd ask me what I was good at, and I'd say, nothing. I'm not good at anything, Mr. R. And then one day he came to me, and he said, hey, Jonathan, I've been watching you. And I think, Nana, I know that you are really good at telling stories. You are so good at telling stories that you could be a writer. No one's ever said that to me before. I was 9 years old, a writer? I looked at him and said, are you out of your goddamn mind, Mr. R? I can't spell to save my life. Mr. R looked right at me and he said, Jonathan, screw spelling. For the first time, somebody told me to forget what I can't do and focus on what I can do. And that changed my life. I went and transcended those odds. And I went to live a life that I'm proud of today. I have people in my life who helped me understand that I wasn't a problem. We got a national tragedy on our hands right now of young folks leaving school and feeling dumb. Don't know about y'all, but some of the smartest people I have ever met in my life, they did not do well in school. They couldn't read or write well, but they could rebuild the car engine from scratch. Everybody has that right to an education. It's not about what's wrong with them, but what's right. And every single human being has something good that they can build a life around. Find the good and share it with the children in your life. And every child deserves that. You know, when I was in that hallway, chilling out with Robert, the custodian, there were days when he was the only adult that would speak to me. There were days where he was the only person that I felt in my life cared for me as a human being. And that matters. That's the work that you all do every single day.
All of the lessons end with readings, resources, and references. In this case, it's Jonathan Mooney's website. The third lesson deals with defining dyslexia, and it begins with what we know, what our teacher candidates know about dyslexia at this point. Checking all of those that are facts. lists the facts, and provides explanations for the myths. And then we move to what is the most commonly cited definition of dyslexia, that by the International Dyslexia Association. And here it is. A specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin, characterized by difficulties with accurate and or fluent word recognition, typically result from a deficit in a phonological component of language, and unexpected. Secondary consequences include problems in reading comprehension. And then we ask our teacher candidates, or those who are viewing the module, to consider some of the individual features. So what does it mean to be a specific learning disability? What does it mean to be neurobiological in origin? What are difficulties with accurate and fluent word recognition and poor spelling? Take some time to talk about deficits in phonological and other components of language. Take some time to talk about unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities and effective classroom instruction, and use this as an opportunity to introduce RTI. And what are those secondary consequences, which we're all very aware of? Again, we cite readings which include chapters from the California Dyslexia Guidelines and other readings that if you're in a teacher preparation program, your students might be assigned to read, and references. And in many ways, the references are for us as teacher educators to go back and take a look at and reread, perhaps. The lesson on identifying dyslexia focuses around 3 primary case studies. Jonah, who is a 7-year-old who's having difficulty learning to read. Ruby, who is a 9-year-old 4th grader, has very good listening comprehension, but is struggling with reading comprehension. And Alejandro, who is a 12-year-old and is unable to access grade level texts. And then we ask as a challenge, which of these students exhibit characteristics that might put them at risk, not necessarily diagnose them as dyslexic, but put them at risk for dyslexia, and it's all 3 of those students. And why is that? So then we explain some of those characteristics and go into more depth for Jonah, for Ruby, and for Alejandro. With a discussion question to follow, what might be reasonable next steps for a teacher to take in meeting the literacy needs of each of these students? What might we do to help Jonah? What kind of supports might a teacher put in place for Ruby? And what might be next reasonable steps for Alejandro? And then we present one more student, Marquita. Marquita has moved to the United States 3 years ago from Tijuana, Mexico. She's moved multiple times after arriving here and is now entering the 5th grade, having attended 4 different elementary schools. Because in 4th grade, she's reading at a low 2nd grade level, she's referred for special education services. However, her eligibility is declined because her dyslexia and her reading problems are attributed to extrinsic factors. And then we ask our teacher candidates to consider that decision. Lesson 5 really takes a deeper dive into dyslexia and goes far beyond sort of the definition of dyslexia. This is an opportunity to introduce some of the most recent research in this field, and says this is not a simple experience for the individual, nor for those who live with the individual, nor for those who teach these individuals. Dyslexia is complex, and it's complex for some of the reasons that we've identified here. It's dimensional, it's not categorical, it's not like measles or chickenpox. You don't have it or you don't have it. You do have it or you don't have it. It ranges from mild to severe. And for that reason and others, it's heterogeneous. For example, phonological processing difficulties are often, but not always, present in individuals with dyslexia, and we introduce subtypes. It co-occurs with other difficulties. 40% of individuals with dyslexia have another disability. It's highly heritable. And it's a developmental disability. It changes over time, in part because the demands of schooling change over time. And it's here that we provide a table of characteristics of dyslexia by grade areas. And this is a downloadable handout. Readings, resources, and some of the most important and current also references. Because of the complexities of dyslexia and other reasons as well, there are many lingering questions, and we selected 3. What is the prevalence of dyslexia? Is dyslexia different from a reading disability? Excuse me. Excuse me. And do we need a new definition of dyslexia? Well, the prevalence of dyslexia ranges from 5 to 20%, depending upon who you're talking to and who you're reading. And that is in part because it depends upon how dyslexia is defined and measured. It's not an easy question to answer. Is dyslexia different from a reading disability? Well, as currently defined, one would suggest that they are not synonymous. However, there are those who believe they are or should be. And do we need a new definition of dyslexia? Well, excuse me, that's the question that's coming up before the International Dyslexia Association. And we probably be reading about this in the months to come. We end, though, by saying that it must reflect the latest research, the multifaceted and heterogeneous manifestation of dyslexia, if it's to give us good information about how to move forward. And the module concludes with consulting with families, what teachers can do. They can listen to concerns, and they can provide strategies. And as Jonathan Mooney said at the very beginning of the module, find the good, celebrate the strengths. All of the modules will end with key takeaways. These are the 4 for this module. Some final thoughts, and then also instructor resources. In this case, it's a downloadable PowerPoint. So that's module 1. We have others coming. Let me go back to the PowerPoint.
And I just wanted to add too here is that, we've been vetting this with other professional organizations, and I think we're learning a lot from this, and I hope we learn, from you what's good, what you'd like to see in the upcoming modules. But we've talked about this as being a very dynamic teaching tool, if that, because these modules serve several purposes. And in conversations at a recent presentation, there's this idea that, the modules, as they are developed, I mean, they can be, you as an instructor can develop and use strands within this, whatever, depending on the methods course you're developing. And you notice too, a little bit different than the IRIS modules, rather than a student finishing this on their own, just on the computer, this has a more interactive feel, where you can take those case studies, for example, and have your candidates respond to them and, build out, theories about assessments, about instruction. For any one of the case studies, it has, I think, more of a, like I say, an interactive feel to them. So, and one that lends itself, I think, to methods courses and to discussions, class discussions, and open-ended assignments and conversations.
So this is how we sort of envisioned spreading the modules out over a teacher preparation program. And Susan's going to talk about how they might do this at Dominguez Hills.
Right. So we have, just our courses that we're building out. You can see that, developing and in early development. So, and how we would, fit those in and tie those in. So it's just, weaving in Introduction to Dyslexia into an introductory course, and then in assessment, the screening and assessment. So how, effective instruction, obviously, with reading methods. So just I'm sure you have similar ones, but just a kind of a specificity, just to kind of take a look at how you might use these modules and embed them into your course syllabi. So looking at the higher education contributions to the SB 488 implementation, we talked about, those two, those two initiatives and policy initiatives in terms of affecting change in our literacy instruction. So the work on the draft literacy standards 488, we had initially adopted some literacy standards and TPEs in 2019. And, as they went to the field, they were wonderful. They were based on research, but the language and the organization of the TPEs weren't not as actionable as the field would have liked. So in May of 2022, CTC convened a literacy work group to review the literacy standards and have them align with SB 488, which, like I say, was a little more recent. So, and then conducted a field review of these. So this has been, like I say, a very intensive work over, just this past year. So the field review, some of you may have filled out a survey that CTC put out on the literacy TPEs, the draft TPEs and standards. And they are broken out according to multiple single subject, ed specialist, and ECE. So they've been through that process, and in the October meeting of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, the literacy standards and TPEs were adopted. And I think, just coming up here in a week or so, CTC will review the literacy program standards and TPEs for the low incidence disability areas, DHH, ECSE, and visually impaired. So a lot of this is all just fresh and new coming out. So the critical components of the literacy program standards, they emphasize the equity and inclusion. And they're also, strong emphasis on asset-based language for students from cultural diversity, neurodiversity, linguistic diversity. And multi-tiered systems of support is a key strand throughout the TPEs and the components. And so an instruction is responsive to age, grade, and literacy development level. And obviously having families involved as key players in the design of instruction and in assessment. And looking ahead to high leverage practices, many of you are very familiar with that. That's a CEDAR document, and that's something that's followed very closely. This part of it ties a lot, the family involvement, the collaboration, and again looking at strengths-based work and intervention, literacy interventions with students with potentially who have dyslexia. So, and obviously the importance of incorporating the California Dyslexia guidelines into the literacy program standards and TPEs, weaving them together more closely. And again, a close eye on ELA and ELD standards both, and how to promote multiliteracy in both English and multilingual programs. And a greater focus, I think, on looking at a wide variety of assessments to inform instruction, to moving forward with referral for special ed if need be, or if it could be prevented. So formative progress monitoring, formal assessments and summative assessments, just having teachers be able to weave together these various forms of assessments in a multidisciplinary context. So as helping students who are struggling readers and who might potentially have dyslexia or a reading disability. So CAR-W contributions, as Sue mentioned earlier, CAR-W is the center let's see, it's to promote reading and writing within the CSU teacher preparation courses. So, and it's housed in the CSU Chancellor's office, and it is designed to serve CSU faculty, but also other state agencies. And so as individuals from each of the campuses are represented. So it's a statewide group. It's an incredible group of people. And we meet semi-annually, and we're working to make sure, and working with CTC, working with CDE, we work closely on these literacy standards with CTC and given feedback on the draft literacy standards, and to try to help to implement them and help with the rewording for clarity. So, and we're right now with the most updated versions of the literacy TPEs, we are conducting crosswalks, both for the multiple subject and single subject literacy TPEs, and so that they can inform teacher preparation programs about, how to implement this particular aspect of the literacy TPEs. Do we still have a sample of that on the next page, Stu? The next one, yeah. So this is before this got broken down a little bit, but it is a sample of work that we were doing within CAR-W. And this is for the TPE language for single subject teacher candidates. So what we did was we broke down statements. It was cut off there at the bottom of the page, but down below there was a 2-column table, and breaking into language all that text up there into actionable things and discrete statements about what teachers, single subject teachers, needed to know and be able to do. And on the right, our subgroup working on single subject actually got core syllabi and found activities that had been developed to meet that particular TPE item. And for the, in this case, it was under meaning making. So it provide some activities that would help, again, teacher preparation programs throughout the state. What does this look like? How can I help candidates to meet this within and have it addressed in the methods coursework? So we were working on that. We will kind of renew that work now that there's a new set and a slightly different structure to the literacy TPEs that were passed just a couple of months ago. So we will be working on that and continued work on that. And that, we'll publish that in some form and have that available. And it's not limited to CSU faculty and, CSU campuses. And whether it's a white paper or, some kind of publication, I'm sure that will be readily available, and we'll disseminate that through all the proper channels just to help, like I say, how to make these TPEs actionable, how to help our candidates meet these very dense and like really ratchets up the bar, I think, for what our expectations are for our candidates and becoming teachers and being able to teach reading and literacy skills at a higher level, and that weave in so many components, the dyslexia guidelines, the new TPEs, all these things that are coming to the fore and we know are very important for the teaching of reading and the teaching of literacy. So just as an example, we're currently redesigning at talking about Dominguez Hills, Cal State Dominguez Hills, we're designing our program coursework to align with the new Ed Specialist TPEs and the literacy TPEs. We have done Ed Specialist TPEs, of course, but now we have the new literacy TPEs, and those are going to be due, I think, in 2024. And I don't know if it's formal responses. I haven't heard, but I think there will be something to be submitted to CTC to make sure that these literacy TPEs are being addressed. So, we as a program and as a department, in terms of Ed Specialist teacher preparation, we're working to align that. And again, that increased focus on the dyslexia guidelines. So we have that. It is woven into the literacy TPEs, but we're also using that as a separate document to inform our work. We're also collaborating with teacher education department. And, just full disclosure, we know how difficult sometimes it is to work across the aisle, work with teacher education department. And they are, they're cooperative, but sometimes the inherent structure of colleges of education make it hard for us to share time and share expertise. So we're working on, getting alignment, because I think that these new literacy TPEs emphasize that. They don't differentiate as much as previously, what it is that a single subject or multiple subject teacher needs to know and be able to do in the areas of literacy. I'm thinking of, a general education teacher needing to know and be able to apply aspects of the dyslexia guidelines. So we're working on that collaboration, and it's, it's slow coming, but we're, maybe the possibility maybe of working on a foundational literacy course, and then, with each program having its own advanced literacy course that is unique, the unique needs and knowledge and skill sets required for a single subject teacher, for a multiple subject teacher, and for an Ed Specialist teacher. So should we let someone's in the waiting room? Should we let them in?
I got him in.
Okay. Sorry, I just saw it pop up on my screen. So here's just one of our, and this is just standard 7A. And, the task, as I broke it down, this is, maybe could break it down even further, but the three components, for example, just in 7A, foundational skills is supervised fieldwork, evidence-based teaching, and then early intervention and monitoring. So, it's easy to see where every course to some level or another, and like I say, these aren't all of our methods courses, but this is just an example. So 480, special ed 480 is an intro to special education. So again, and we're thinking of those that developing and then advancement towards and then finally applying the three like I said, introductory and then towards mastery. So they're introduced in special education. They intro to special education. They're observing an effective literacy instruction task or lesson. And that is done in supervised field work, and they are seeing examples of evidence-based teaching. And they're filling out, they're completing modules and so that they can understand skills related to MTSS and to RTI, learning about how early intervention is interdisciplinary in nature, and it also requires certain kinds of assessments. 403, the literacy methods course that I teach, it's more advanced. It's more on the other end, but it's a case study of a struggling reader. And that is part of their fieldwork hours. And they are doing evidence-based teaching one-on-one with the student. So it definitely fills that other piece within 7A. And then finally, the early intervention and monitoring, they are doing initial assessments, interpreting assessments that the student already has. And so they're applying that within the case study. They in that course, they also do an MTSS meeting role play. And they either choose or are given an example student who is not identified for special education. They role play 5 or 6 individuals come together and they discuss the assessments. So they have to create assessments around this case study. They have to discuss as an interdisciplinary team, whether, possibilities about, is this second language learning? Is this possibly dyslexia? And because of the background factors of the individual student. And then the outcome of the role play is next steps for assessment and progress monitoring and for intervention. So that is definitely covers that. And then 468 is a case study, parts 1 and 2. And then the one is just the design, the case study design part 1 is designing instruction for students that are struggling. And then part 2 is just carrying that out and reflecting a little bit like TPA light. The evidence-based teaching, we have across the department, we have adopted a new, and this is kind of more with our field work as well, but they're using the newly adopted a lesson plan that is very closely aligned with the TPA. And so they're seeing the language and they're, completing and planning very close to the TPAs and also aligning with the literacy TPEs. Then they too do modules on MTSS and RTI. And SPE 642, language literacy and cognition. And that's done by Dr. Kai Green, who's also on the collaborative. And he does an excellent job of bringing in observations of students with language delays and field work, looking at how do you do a lesson plan that emphasizes language development, language comprehension. They also do teaching presentation. They also do a language sample analysis and have that incorporated into an early intervention and progress monitoring scenario. So, and with SPE 467, that's our methods course that concentrates and focuses on assessment. They too have a breakdown of case study parts 1 and 2. One is doing a practice assessment, formal assessment with a student. Part 2 is taking that further and then developing other assessments for that individual and in terms of more CBMs, progress monitoring. The case study, they also do an instructional plan based on their assessments, the formal and informal assessments, and they are doing modules on formal and informal literacy assessments as well in assignments and in class discussions. Our final field work, we really put a lot of work into the revised lesson plan for literacy TPEs and for alignment to the Ed Specialist Cal TPAs. And within that, they are doing a literacy intervention plan for a student, kind of aligned to their TPA task as well. So we just want to make sure that just kind of seeing how it's not confined to one course. It isn't just, we've woven closely. SB 403, the course I teach, I just kind of talk about this case study of a struggling reader. It really is a capstone course itself, and then this case study. They select a student from their field experience. They use student background knowledge, formal assessments, a variety of input and assessments from both formal and informal, plus their own observations. They have to consider LPAC scores, and if the student is an English learner, they serve students in South LA. Many have are at some degree or either former English language learners, or they're still classified English language learners. So that becomes an important part of the information. And we use the California Dyslexia guidelines, so we go through those in class as they develop their assessment and evidence-based practice plans for the case study student. And asset-based language is obviously emphasized as well, and student funds of knowledge. They carry all this out within a semester. It's a heavy load, but we go through and see amazing results sometimes. So kids that were kind of hidden in plain sight, that weren't reading, maybe not even necessarily identified for special ed, because that is not a requirement of the case study. And just seeing how that can be naturally woven in and embedded, all these the literacy TPAs and the dyslexia guidelines, and inform a case study like this. So just really quickly, the MTSS role play as well. So this kind of new because I felt like it was a missing piece from our methods course. We're doing this heavy role play, case study, but the role play lets them kind of do a little bit more of a 5,000-foot level, looking at how, looking at a student and making plans and working as a team, an interdisciplinary team. It could be a speech pathologist. There's always a special ed teacher, but a regular ed teacher, and who are all the people that come together and create both the literacy intervention plan and also the assessments that are needed. So it ties in closely with we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Is that our high leveraged practices? I know many of you are familiar with that. And so just as a refresher, quick one, how is it? It's not just instruction. It's not just us. Sorry, that's my dog. I was waiting for him to do that. So CEDAR high leverage practices look closely at collaboration, and I think that these TPEs do as well, but just intentionally looking at the two side by side. We're going to have you kind of think about the emphasis here, and I just did a very, very broad highlight here. I know many of you have this printed out, the McCluskey document for CEDAR high leverage practices. And just how do these tie in? How can we put them together? So, and did you want to introduce the breakout, Sue, or do you want to just have me keep going?
So I think we have enough time to do a breakout. Would you agree, Susan? And yeah. So go ahead, Jenny.
We just have a one or two questions, so maybe it would be good to answer those right now. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, lots of appreciative comments, so I'd like you to read. But when do you anticipate this document to be available? And is this standard 7A alignment and others available?
Not yet. That's a great question. The alignment in general, that's kind of that was a sample. The CAR W group is going to, my understanding is that we're going to break out those, just make 7A, again, the new TPEs and the new structure, and provide the guidance. I don't have a timeline on that. We were waiting for the CTC to adopt those, and we've had one meeting since then, and we've talked a bit about it. So I would anticipate maybe by the end of spring, but I don't want to promise something because I don't know if the group as a whole has made a decision, but we'll let you know. We'll let this group know. Virginia will keep you in contact, and so yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so let's go ahead with the breakout.
The rooms are ready to go. Just how long are people going to be in the breakout rooms? About 10 minutes?
It's 12:38 right now.
Okay, so we'll pull you back in about 10 minutes, but I'm going to open the rooms. It should automatically put you in. If not, I can manually put you in. Sometimes when people are on a phone, they don't automatically go in. But I'm going to open those rooms and you guys can chat away, and we'll see you in about 10 minutes. Okay, here we go. I am opening the rooms.
And people will be able to come back and look at the questions.
It might be helpful to, can you put the question in the chat and then I can broadcast it to all the rooms?
How do I put it in the chat?
Okay. Thank you.
2, 3, and I've got to assign. Oh, no, you guys, I'm not assigning. Okay.
Can you do that, Jenny? Put them in the chat, or?
I'm going to move someone from room 2 to 3.
Let me see if is Amy still here? Oh, she already went in a room. I don't really know how to do that.
What are we trying to do?
Make it shareable in the chat.
I think I know how to do that. The question.
All of the questions, yes, that slide.
The slide is harder.
Let me try and do this, Jenny. Let me try and copy and put it in the chat. Let me see. I don't know if it's going to work. Let me try.
I'm going to pause the recording is resumed, and now I am going to close all rooms so they'll all be coming back in 60 seconds or less.
So Jenny, do you want to ask them to share something out?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it'd be great.
I'll call on our faculty and our we're in these schools.
Well, they're having good conversations because they're taking a minute to come back in. So that's great.
That's good. Well, welcome back, everybody. Let's see. There's one group.
We've still got a couple rooms who are chatting away. They're not going to close for. They got 27 more seconds, so they're clearly, that's great. It's always great to see when people they can't quite leave yet.
We'd already solved all the world's problems, so we were good. Michelle and
Wow.
I, we're like, let's go back in, and then we'll tell them how it's done, right, Amy?
Excellent.
We're done here. We've done all we can.
Wow.
And Stephanie, sorry about that last minute switch. I was evening up the room, so I'm sure at one point you were like, "Wait, where'd I go? Wait, here I am."
No, it's funny. It was so funny because initially I was in the room with Lydiana. And who was my colleague at Cal State Long Beach. And so that would have been too much good stuff in one room. So it's good that you spread us out,
So I just picked on the bottom and was like, I'm going to move them into room 3. So we're all balanced.
No, it was so good. And then I got to meet new people. So thank you so much.
Excellent.
So we're going to ask for some volunteers if you wanted to share out all this wonderful stuff. And we have 9 minutes. So I'm sorry, you can't. Maybe all your wonderful stuff, you'll have to find some other way to share. So let's see. Group 1, I don't have the names in front of me. Would
So
anybody?
Catherine or Mary Bake-Hendy? Who wants to share?
Yes, correct.
Yes. What would you like to share?
Hmm.
I know we're putting you on the spot.
Well, we did talk about faculty looking at a takeaway for us was the integrating the dyslexia guidelines throughout your program. And that was a really important thing to do, not a lecture or two in a specific course or two, but really integrating it through the program would be very beneficial.
Excellent.
Thank you. How about group
In
2?
group 2, we have Fatmana, Gail, or Lydiana. So if one of you 3 would like to share out.
I know.
Otherwise, I'm gonna call on who's ever at the top.
Well,
go ahead and be the reporter for my group.
Okay.
I had a very lovely conversation with Gail and Padmana about how they are integrating the literacy standards and actually just doing a lot of collaboration within their universities across departments and all the different credential programs and bringing that all together. And I actually just really enjoy picking their brains because it's so nice to have collaboration time with other people to see what they're doing that's so well and how we can borrow from that. So for example, Gail shared a lot about her background as a classroom teacher and in being trained in Orton Gillingham and how that has been very beneficial to her students. So it was nice to hear out from everyone.
great. Thank you.
Excellent. And last but not least, room 3, Amy, Michelle, or Stephanie, who would like to share out?
Do you want me to jump in, and Stephanie, you can jump in and help?
Yeah, I'll start just in case you take all the good stuff. And no, we actually had a very valuable conversation because we were talking about the dual credential because we all have a hand in dual credentials where we are. And our point is that it's so important for the multiple subject general education teachers, because truly, like in kindergarten and first, that's what Michelle was saying, like in kindergarten and first grade, that is when we need to start making sure that we're seeing these signs of, and if you're not, we look at it as sort of like a special education function, but it truly is something that needs to be embedded throughout teacher education.
And then we were thinking about the series of classes where, I mean, at least at CI, we hired Anna Asapofa to help us get the standards into our curriculum. But then what we haven't done yet is map back on into the prerequisites. And so we'd like to think about strategically about how we give very salient beginning information to lay down the maps basically for students. So when they get into the credential program, they've already have some foundational knowledge where we give them enough repetition so they really internalize the subject matter, but not so they think that they're getting the same thing over and over again. So being strategic about really laying down the foundation there. And I haven't tackled that yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you, everybody. And shout out to Michelle, one of our alums. And Fatmana, I'm glad you were able to join us. And of course, Amy and everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. We have 2 more of these communities of practice sessions this semester. And we don't have dates for you yet, but the one will be on working with English learners who have dyslexia. And then the other is going to be on clinical practice more broadly, and how to bring in all these new ideas, implementation practices that people have been doing. So like that was very inspirational, Susan, when you had the chart, my goodness. So things like that. So we all end the semester and the first year of launching our new Ed Specialist programs, with a lot of things very solidified. So those will be coming up, probably one in March and one in early May. Okay. Are there any questions for what's for our speakers? Oh, all good.
Well,
That means
thank
they
you
did
for
a good
having us.
job.
Well, thank you all for coming.
Very
and-
much. Thanks.
I did want to say what I'll be doing for everyone is when the Zoom recording is downloaded, Susan and Sue are going to send me the PowerPoint. And so to everybody who registered, I'm going to send the initial Zoom recording and PowerPoint so you can get access to it earlier. And then we'll also be downloading it and uploading it into the YouTube channel. That tends to take a little bit longer. And I know you guys, there was such fabulous information shared here that I know everybody's going to want to access that information and not have to wait. So we're going to make sure that you can get this recording and the PowerPoint so you can get your hands on the great information shared, because it's really some fabulous stuff. I was emailing people saying, I've got a great module for you. So I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way.
All right. Well, thank you again to our speakers, and thank you to all of you. Have a wonderful next few weeks in your semester. We'll look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Thank you for having us.
Have a
Appreciate
great day. And I look forward to anybody who comes to CCTE, the SPAN conference.
Oh,
See you
yes.
there.
Good point. Good
Hopefully.
point.